Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 Houston Open initial research show. Hopefully your Valspar went quite a bit better than mine. Did have a decent sweat at the start of the day, and then Keith Mitchell decides to shoot about a bajillion. So that took me right out of any hope of winning the outrights. Ben Martin shot 2 days of a bajillion to take me out of his top 20 bet. Had him a lot in DFS, so pretty middling week there. So hopefully you had a much more successful Valspar championship than I did. Had plenty of Peter Malnati, Xander, all of that. You can see the fandom is still on, so you're going to have to suffer through that for another week as Duke has made it to the Sweet 16. So I might be a tad bit superstitious. I'm going to repeat the wardrobe attire for the week, but we aren't here for that. We are here for the Texas Children's Houston Open. Would love to hear how your week went and what your thoughts are on Memorial Park. It's quite an interesting week, as this is the first time we've seen Memorial Park at this point in the calendar. We'll explain that throughout the evening and throughout the week. So would love to hear from the community in that regard. But let's get into it, shall we? All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is the best golf analytics tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter golf gambler and much better golf DFS player. Go check out fantasynational.com. You won't regret it. In the description to the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where usually I post research every Monday afternoon around previous winners of the week's tournament, some course notes. Going to be a little bit different this week, considering, as I mentioned, Memorial Park has not been seen in the spring portion of the schedule. It has traditionally been on or in the fall portion of the schedule. So we're going to have to figure out how we want to adjust for that this week, and I think I have some ideas for that. So not sure what angle I'm going to use this week for research. I'll try to have something out tomorrow for you all. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do for the PGA Tour, then give me a follow over at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and my top player usage in the DFS contests that I play. You would see the enormous betting card that I had, considering I combined the March Madness bets and wagers with last week's Valspar card. Unfortunately, the kind of placement bets, if you will, to reach the Sweet 16, they all fell by the wayside. I did have Oregon, who fell in double overtime last night, so that one didn't come through for me. The only other placement wager I have still alive is Illinois to win the region, though UConn looks really good. Do have all of my win wagers alive in March Madness, but if you want to see my weekly betting cards and top player usage for the PGA Tour, then give me a follow over at X. And then lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. It's a very good way to start your week of preparation. He continues to provide you info throughout the week in his own way with recent form, course history, and all of that. And if you are a subscriber to his article, which is free to do, by the way, to subscribe to, you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat after calls on Wednesday nights, as he is gracious enough to host me over there. We continue the DFS talk about game theory, our best plays, any places in the price board that we seem to be gravitating to or away from. So it's a great continuation from here on calls, and I'm thankful to him for hosting me over there, and we continue the talk over there. And the only way you're going to be able to join us is if you subscribe to his article. So make sure you go and show him some love. Go show him some support. Follow him over on social media and subscribe to that article. Lastly, we are live. Chat is open. Would love to hear from you all. Again, on top of anything March Madness, is your bracket busted? Did Baylor kill you? Did Auburn kill you? Anything to that effect? Anything you want to talk about March Madness? How was your Valspar? And then moving forward, how do you think Memorial Park is going to play? Who do you think you are leaning towards in the early parts of your research. Would love to hear from the community in that regard. So let's do our initial research for the 2024 Texas Children's Houston Open. And we start, as we traditionally do, on a Sunday evening over at the GCSAA Tournament Fact Sheet. Let me get everything situated here. We are in Houston, Texas, for obvious reasons, being the Houston Open. The Houston Open has had many, many title sponsors. I believe last year was Cadence Bank. For the longest time, it was the Shell Houston Open, which was one of the main preparation tournaments that players used for the Masters. But for the past 3 or 4 years now, it has been on the fall portion of the schedule. Generally, it was about the second to last tournament on the schedule before the RSM, before the players took a break over Christmas and New Year's. This year, the Houston Open has moved back to its, traditional spot in the early spring. And it's going to change how we look at Houston a little bit, or at least look at Memorial Park a little bit, considering everything that we know of Memorial Park was gathered from the fall. Most notably, we'll skip ahead a little bit. You'll see the greens are listed as Poa Trivialis Overseed. At this point in the year, the Bermuda is dormant. And in the fall, the Bermuda is thriving. It's still alive. So the green surfaces, the biggest part of this is different. So let's go ahead and take a look at Memorial Park in a GCSAA Tournament Fact Sheet standpoint. Of course, in Houston, Texas. Originally designed by John Bredemus in 1936, it was renovated in 2019 by Tom Doak with special advisor or with a lot of help from Brooks Koepka. Brooks Koepka had his hand on a lot of the renovation around Memorial Park. Good evening, Darnell. Good to see you. I hope your Valspar was much better than mine. It wasn't a complete disaster the way the players was, but it still wasn't great. I did have a little bit of a sweat going at the beginning of the day with Keith Mitchell. He decides to shoot about 11 billion, takes himself right out of the tournament, and any visions of winning an outright go out the window there. Ben Martin played very, very well on Thursday and Friday and decided to have 2 days of shooting 11 billion. So that, kind of crushed a lot of my DFS lineups. I did have a fair amount of Xander, and he played well, which, kind of saved me in that regard. It was a very middling week, still a slightly losing week, but a middling week. I did not have Peter Malnati at all. Not nearly as high on Cam Young this week as I had been in the past couple of weeks. Things of that nature. My lineup was actually decent. I did mention that I was not going to play some Rye. Also had Mitchell, hoping I get 6-6 for once. Not bad. Yeah. Hopefully you turned out all right. How's your March Madness going? If you decided to do any brackets, but yeah, it's a little bit disappointing. But there was at least signs of progress as opposed to the players and the Cognizant, which was just to be frank, it was an absolute shit show, at least for me. So at least a little bit of signs of encouragement. As we move to Houston, mentioned that Tom Doak and Brooks Koepka had a very big hand in helping Tom Doak in 2019. Memorial Park is a very, very long par 70. Don't do any college basketball diving deep into upcoming baseball. Yeah. Oh yeah. We'll be doing that. I probably won't do anything special for like opening day or anything. I would love to. It's just time commitments. But we'll be doing some baseball. Absolutely. We'll be doing some baseball. As I mentioned, Memorial Park, very long, par 70. This is actually understating the yardage because one of the holes we see in the course notes, the 17th green was moved 30 yards further back. So we're looking at about a 7,450 yard par 70. An extremely long par 70. And that has added to, or has been a big contributor onto why Memorial Park has been one of the toughest courses on tour since its arrival back in 2020. A very unique design in the sense that there are 5 par 3s and 3 par 5s here at Memorial Park that is contributing to, or comprising of the par 70. 5 par 3s again this week, so we'll have to see throughout the week how much we want to devote to that. And then 3 par 5s. Greens are very large here, 7,000 square feet, but we're going to see that they're not very easy to hit. Despite the lack of water in play, only 4 holes with water in play, despite the lack of bunkers in play, just 21 bunkers. These greens are not easy to hit. They are very, very sloped, undulating, lots of false edges, false fronts, and runoffs to the sides make for very difficult chipping, and they're generally pretty fast, although again this is being played in the spring for the first time, so I'm not sure what we're going to see in terms of green speed, as they have generally been kept pretty fast in the fall. Greens, I mentioned in the fall, the Bermuda grass is alive and thriving. But now, since we are seeing Memorial Park and the Houston Open in March, now we are at Poa Trivialis Overseed again. So the 3rd straight week that I know of that we are seeing Poa Trivialis. The other courses that we've been looking at, Harbor Town, Innisbrook, where we were last week, TBC Sawgrass, Scottsdale, TBC San Antonio, the stadium course. So we've seen a lot of Poa Trivialis lately. We'll see how much we want to focus on putting this week. But the same surface type that we have seen the past 2 weeks, and seemingly a lot since moving from California and the pure Poa Anna. The rest of the course is perennial rye overseed, but I want you to take a note of this rough. Normally I like to mention this or spotlight this if it's very long. I'm spotlighting this because it's very short. It's only kept at 1 1/4 inches, so very, very short. Players are not afraid to be in the rough. It is not difficult to play out of, not very thick or penalizing. The main defense to the course are the greens and just the pure length of the course. So there's a look at Memorial Park in terms of a GCSA tournament fact sheet. Again, the biggest thing that I'm going to stress, at least in terms of a GCSA tournament fact sheet, it's a very, very long par 70. Over 7,400 yards as a par 70. These greens are very large, though they don't play that big due to the runoffs and false edges and whatnot, and the undulation in the greens. But they are technically pretty large by PGA Tour standards. Only 4 holes with water in play, and we are on Poa Trivialis overseeded greens. So with that, we're going to move to Fantasy National, and quite a few big names in the tournament this weekend, and this is updated for the Valspar. We'll click on Doug Gim here, who was very, very middling at the Valspar. So you see his stats are in there. So this is updated through the Valspar. Now, we have several big names here, as I imagine that they are treating this as their Masters tune-up. We will be at San Antonio next week, I believe, for the Valero. So I would imagine players like Scotty Scheffler and Wyndham Clark, maybe Sahith Theegala, Will Zalatoris, Tony Finau. Players like this are probably treating this as their Masters tune-up. So we've got a pretty decent field this week, or at least it is very top heavy, is what I'll say. Again, with the big names of Scheffler and Wyndham Clark, Sahith Theegala, Siwoo Kim's a multi-winner on the PGA Tour, Will Zalatoris, Tom Hoge. Big names here this week. So not a throwaway event by any means. And you see sorted on the 2024 statistics, your top performers since the beginning of the 2024 season. Don't want to get too much into it because we will be using some metrics here. Let's go into the course breakdown. Take a look at Memorial Park in terms of a scorecard and graphical view here. The par fives, the three of them here, are your best chances to score, just like majority of PGA Tour courses. But I want you to notice the lack of eagles. You got the par 5 third, 587, only at a 1.5%. The gargantuan, this monstrosity par 5 eighth at 625 yards, less than 1% eagle rate. Less than 1% on the par 5 16th, measuring 576. Decent scoring opportunities, sure. 3/10, almost 2/10. But there's quite a few holes that are very, very difficult here, including the par 4 first, 522 yards, plays to a quarter of a shot over par, 3/10 of a shot over par, 529 yard par 4. So you can see where the length of of Memorial Park comes in. These very long, very difficult par 4s. Par 4 18th, 503, 2/10 of a shot over par, 496. And again, the par 5s aren't short by any means. 625, 587, 576. So that is where your length comes in here at Memorial Park. If we look for where par falls to 9th and 10th most difficult holes, you got 600ths over par, 600ths over par, 500ths. The 13th is 300ths under, and 100th over. So in between the 12th and 13th most difficult holes is where par falls. That is showing you a pretty darn difficult course there. We move to strokes gained by shot type. For the top 10s, we're looking at a short game course. Quite a bit of putting, a lot of around the green, a little bit of approach. Again, you're going to have to hit your irons well here, but we're looking at a short game course for our top 10s. We move to top 5s, a lot in putting. Now, it's a little surprising to see the off the tee gain so much, or really, technically, the around the green fall as much as it does. It's all about the putting approach, a little bit of off the tee, but as you continue on down the score, down the leaderboard, like if we were to look at the top 20s, you see how much the around the green plays for them. So the further you go down the leaderboard, the more the around the green comes into play. I don't know how much we want to factor that in, since we're trying to find the elite, these top 10s, these top 5s, these winners. And off the tee will be a little bit, but you see a whole lot of putting, and I may have mentioned a whole lot of putting around Memorial Park. A little bit of approach here, especially for the winners. Off the tee, maybe a little bit, but it is a little bit curious for me to see the around the green fall as you rose on the leaderboard. So it's all about the putting. We look at strokes gained by hole by par. Remember, there are 5 par 3s, so seeing them the least of these is a little bit surprising. Of course, most professionals take advantage of the par 5, so that's where the majority of the strokes gained are coming from. But if we go to top 5s, par 3s do catch up and surpass the par 4s. The par 5s are still leading, but I want you to see the big jump that the par 3s take for your winners. So this at least is showing that we do want to have a little bit of emphasis on the par 3s this week. And of course, especially tomorrow on the Data Dive show, we're going to want to really take a look at this. But at least for our initial look at Memorial Park, the par 3s, at least for the winners, have carried quite a bit of weight. And again, there are 5 of them, so it makes quite a bit of sense. But the par 5s are still carrying the majority of the strokes gained. Moving to hole composition. This might be another week where we kind of look at all of par 3s, as the par 3s are pretty evenly spread out. 2 from 150 to 175, and then 1 each in each of these buckets here from 175 to 225 plus. So the par 3s are pretty well spread out. Par 4s, much the same. We do have 1 from 350 to 400, not really drivable, just a short par 4, 3 each in the particular lengths from 400 to 500 plus. And again, the 3 hardest holes on the course are these very long par 4s. Par 4 first, 522, 503, 529. Where did it go? Par 4 14th. And you still have some very long par 4s that are just under 500 yards. 490, gosh dang it, 496, 490. So these are the longest and most difficult holes generally here at Memorial Park. And then the 3 par 5s, 2 fall under 600 yards and 1 over 600 yards. Approach shot distribution, much like Bay Hill, much like Torrey Pines, these long golf courses, they emphasize long iron approach shots. More than a quarter of your approach shots come from 200 plus here at Memorial Park. That isn't to say we're going to focus on that, because you do get a fair amount from 150 to 175. You do have a fair amount of shorter par 4s as well. But these long par 4s and the par 5s, they do demand some good long iron proficiency. Historic cut line, the first year that Memorial Park was seen, +4. It has come down to +2 and the +1. I think a lot of the difficulty we'll see if the wind is picking up. It is Texas, but unlike the Valero, that's pretty wide open, the Memorial Park's tree lined. So some of that wind does get blocked out. And in 2022, they had torrential rain on Wednesday, and that continued into the morning of the Houston Open, led to ball in hand. I mean, it was just a very soft week, and it played extremely long. So my guess is going to be probably in this +2 to +3 range, but we'll check the wind forecast starting tomorrow. We look at scoring distribution. The bogeys, about 17% bogeys, 16.5 or so birdies, so pretty even there. Eagles, absolutely non-existent. You can't even see the bar there. Doubles, you do have a few, not too many, to be honest with you, just bogeys, just due to the length of the course. So stacking up scores that are over par and under par, putting them together, you got more scores over par than under. Driving accuracy, I mentioned this a little bit. Players aren't necessarily too concerned about being in the rough. It's only an inch and a quarter, so not the most penalizing rough ever. So a lot of players just have driver in hand and just kind of get it as close to the hole as they can off the tee. So driving accuracy, much less here. Now greens are much less here, even though they are much bigger than the tour average. These greens are very difficult to hit. They're difficult to hold. And scrambling is less successful here as well than the average tour event. And that's why I thought around the green would play a little bit more important than what some might think. But again, as we moved up the leaderboard, the around the green kept falling and falling in terms of strokes gained. So it'll be interesting to see tomorrow in the data dive show what the around the green is doing for much of the top of the leaderboard. But at least showing here, scrambling is not all that successful. A little bit less than tour average. 3 putts per round, a little bit less than tour average. You see the distance, just a huge amount of distance here. I mean, players are just hitting driver on these par 4s and par 5s. Just a lot of length here. We'll see how much length correlates to success, but players are at least hitting driver in the proximity roughly by about a half a foot further away from the hole. There's a look at Memorial Park in terms of a scorecard and graphical view. Before we go back to the player page view, I do want to look at the historic conditions. And we're only going to be looking at 2021 and beyond, at least the 2021 season. This was 2020 in terms of fall 2020. Because as you can see, even though it says year 2023, we have not seen Memorial Park since the fall of 2022. So we're only focused on these 3 years, and you see there's only been 1 round that's easy. We had and only 2 rounds of average. It has been a very, very difficult test of golf. Greens, they are Bermuda, but with the Poa Trivialis overseed, we now have the ability to, final or specialize our search window there. So we'll be looking at Poa Trivialis courses. Green speeds, I would guess these are going to be average, as they've been kept fast for a lot of the fall. My guess would be average, but that's why I don't generally use a green speed filter unless we know, like, the Masters are going to be kept at lightning, or Memorial, they're generally kept at lightning speed. So we'll be just looking at Poa Trivialis, but the biggest thing here, just lots of difficult. And I don't see that changing per se, unless the wind is completely calm. But even so, the wind was calm in 2021, and 3 of the 4 rounds were difficult. So we've seen a few players that are in the field this week. I am going to expand this to the last 2 years. When rounds have been difficult to par, our top performers in the field this week: Scotty Scheffler, Wyndham Clark, Will Zalatoris, Jason Day, Justin Suh, Sahith Theegala, Ryan Fox, Tony Finau, Siwoo Kim, and Gary Woodland. Now, I will admit that I have not seen any field changes. I was last able to look right before lunchtime, I guess, which would be 12:30 or so Eastern. So it's been a few hours. There may be some field changes. I'll make sure to have that for you tomorrow. But if you know of any field changes, feel free to jump into chat to let the community and myself know. That way we're not spending undue time on a player who's not playing. But there's a look at our top performers when rounds are difficult. And of course, we'll take a look at wind and such starting tomorrow. All right. I am going to bring this back to... Oh, no. Wait a second. We still need to look at a few of these strokes gained here. So, do need to bring in the 2024 filter. Last 36 rounds. Let's take a look at these various strokes gained. Your top off-the-tee players in the field this week: Scotty Scheffler, Keith Mitchell, Cameron Champ, Kevin Yu, Kevin Doherty, Siwoo Kim, Stephan Jaeger, Sahith Theegala, Carl Yuan, and Wyndham Clark. You can't forget about the irons. Your top iron players: of course, Scotty, Tom Hoge, Tony Finau, Wyndham Clark, Will Zalatoris, Doug Gim, Jake Knapp, Grayson Sigg, Carson Young, and Andrew Novak. Going to hold off on around the green until tomorrow. It might come back in, but I do have some courses to look at here. So the same courses we've been looking at the past couple of weeks. We're going to be looking at some Poa Trivialis. So we're looking at Harbour Town, host of the RBC Heritage. Of course, Innisbrook, where we were this past week for the Valspar. Quail Hollow, host of the Wells Fargo Championship. I believe it's the top one. Stadium course, the main course of the American Express. TBC San Antonio, host of the Valero Texas Open. Sawgrass, no explanation there. And Scottsdale, host of the Waste Management. These are the courses, or the consistent courses on the PGA Tour that have Poa Trivialis overseeded greens. So on those, or at those courses on that surface, in the past 2 years, top putters: Taylor Montgomery, Sam Ryder, Justin Suh, Aaron Baddeley, Thomas Dietrich, Ben Griffin, Chad Ramey, Billy Horschel, Andrew Novak, and Sahith Theegala are your top 10 putters on this surface in the field this week. All right, let me bring in all courses and all records. Let's filter for 2024. We'll take a quick look at two different things here: par 3s and par 5s. They're going to be heavily emphasized this week. So your top par 3 performers: Will Zalatoris, Grayson Sigg, Tom Hoge, Billy Horschel, David Skins, Chan Kim, Kurt Kitayama, Jorge Campillo, Nate Lashley, and Michael Kim. And then par 5s, you absolutely have to score here, or score on these par 5s here: Doug Ghim, Scotty Scheffler, Wyndham Clark, Tony Finau, Mark Hubbard, Nick Dunlap, Max Grazerman, Bo Hossler, Will Zalatoris, and Kevin Yu. All right, we move now to the tournament history, or the strokes gained total tab here in Fantasy National. And just for my recollection, I think we're only going to be looking at these 3 years, 2021, 2022, and 2023. I believe. Yeah, so Carlos Ortiz was the first winner at Memorial Park. So we're only looking in the past 3 years here. So Tony Finau is your defending champion, at least at Memorial Park. Scotty Scheffler has played extremely well here, runner-up in a top 10. Mav McNeely, who's on quite a bit of a heater, kind of fell off a little bit this week, still a top 30. He's in fantastic form. I know you mentioned him quite a bit last week, Darnell. Scott Piercy has been good here. Mackenzie Hughes has been good here. And that's the appeal of Memorial Park, is that you don't have to be a bomber per se to win. But if you're not a bomber, you really have to be tidy with your short game, and that's what Mackenzie Hughes is. Joel Damon, not necessarily the biggest hitter, but has played extremely well here, been very tidy with his short game, especially here. Aaron Rai, a lot of accuracy. Tyson Alexander, solo runner-up. Ben Taylor. So there's a look at some of the players who have played the best around Memorial Park in its 3 years. I didn't mention Jason Day. He's had a middling finish, but a top 10 and a top 20 as well. So there's a look at your top performers at Memorial Park. Again, we're only focused on these 3 years here. The other end of the spectrum, gosh dang it, the players who have not played well: Jimmy Walker's 0 for 3, Pendrith's 1 for 2, Martin Traynor has a T5 and a missed cut. He's getting hurt by this one, so he would rise quite a bit for Memorial Park only. Robbie Shelton has been pretty mediocre. Henrik Norlander's been pretty mediocre. There's Norlander. Norlander's been pretty bad. Neesmith's been pretty mediocre. 2 for 3, but nothing better than a T46. Peter Malnati, last week's winner, 0 for 2 here. Chesson Hadley, 0 for 2. Darren, I think he does well this week. I very well could. Very well could. Like I said, one of the things that I was harping on is that it was just too much ownership. And it turned out that he didn't play particularly well at Valspar. He tends to struggle when it's difficult. If we filter on him, he's kind of struggled when it's been difficult. At least it's not his preferred So that I'm always, a little concerned with that, and especially in the wind. Even though he's from England, he has not performed well, at least on PGA Tour courses when it's been windy. So that's what led me to being off of him, along with the very high ownership. So we'll have to see what his ownership looks like and what others are saying throughout the week. I don't hate it. I mean, he's been fairly good here, but we'll just have to see. There's a look at the players who have not played particularly well at Memorial Park. Taylor Moore 0 for 2. Kelly Craft 1 for 3. Chad Ramey 0 for 2. So there's a look at the players who have not been good here at Memorial Park. All right, with that, we're going to go to Microsoft Excel, and a little bit different this evening. Normally, I look at the course that we're at, and we look at it against the other full field courses. I have not found that to be particularly helpful. So instead, we're just going to go, if I can figure out where my life is here, we're just going to bring up the early look file and go straight to it. If you get some benefit out of looking at a course against full field or against the average full field course, let me know in chat or in the comments, and I can maybe look at it a little bit tomorrow. But at least in terms of this 2024 season, I haven't gained a lot of of confidence of I just haven't gotten a lot of usage out of comparing against other full field courses. A lot of that has to do probably with the signature events and stuff, with this being the first year of the no-cut signature events, or how many there are of them. So I'm going to try something different this week. I'm not going to look at Memorial Park against other full field courses. I'm just going to go straight into the early look this week. And then tomorrow, I will still look at the Memorial Park deep data, looking at the par 3s, the par 4s, par 5s, birdies and bogeys, specifically the Memorial Park, but not against other courses. So I would be quite interested to hear from the community in that regard. Do you get much out of looking at a course against other full field courses, or is that something that that I can drop from the week's preview or whatnot? Well, we're going to try it this week without going there, unless there's a lot of feedback that the community wants to see it. So instead, let's just go ahead and go straight to the early look. If a player is highlighted in orange, and again, this is as of 12:30 earlier this afternoon Eastern time, the players in orange are the alternates. So that's why they're highlighted. Just letting you know. But Memorial Park only been seen 3 years, so we don't have a lot of information to go on. But you see, Joel Damon, T5 and a T9. Alex Smalley's been good here. Tony Finau is your defending champion. He's been solid across the board, but has been in questionable form at best. You could argue in bad form. If we remove the players who have only played it once, just take a look at the players who have played Memorial Park at least 2 of the 3 years. Let's see what they've been doing and doing well here. Not a whole lot off the tee. Not a whole lot. If we go down to, say, Russell Knox, and I understand he's an alternate, but anyone inside the top 40, this is 13 players. This is a 1.3. You got a couple of bigger names, or bigger numbers here, I should say, but quite a few negative. The irons have been very solid. This is a 1.8. The around the green has been solid, and that's what I really do believe, that the around the green game is going to be pretty important here. This is a 1.7, so 1.8, 1.7, 1.3, and the putting's been strong too. It's a 1.4. So solid all the way around. It's a true test of golf. You're going to have to be good with every part of your game. But we're going to have a lot of emphasis in putting. We saw that in the course breakdown. Of course, my bias is to be favoring the approach players, so we're going to have a little bit of that. But I really do think Around the Green is going to have a say in who performs well here. Moving to distance, greens, good drives, all of that. Not a whole lot in distance because everybody's using driver, so I don't know how much there appears to be to gain off of driving distance. You know, you have Scheffler, Sure, Finau, Vegas, but they're generally longer hitters anyway. Again, like Piercy, not a long hitter. He's been very good here. Damon is not a long hitter. He's been very good here. Aaron Rise, not long. He's been pretty good here. So I don't see distance playing too much of a factor. I don't think it hurts. It's one of those things where at least, you know, early on a Sunday evening, and I have all of Monday, all of Tuesday, and most of Wednesday to make my mixed condition model, I could see myself maybe putting 5% in driving distance, but I don't see it being a major factor. I really don't see fairways being much of a factor either, considering that this rough is not difficult to play out of. The players aren't necessarily trying to avoid the rough. I'm thinking either good drives, only because good drives will simulate those players that are good at hitting the greens if they're in the rough, or we might just look at greens by themselves. This is a 2.7. This is a 2.1. I'll be interested to see when we look at the deep dive into the data for Memorial Park tomorrow, what the bigger number is between these two. But I'm leaning greens right now on this page view. Going into scoring, what I would have guessed, the higher raw numbers are in the birdies gained, but your bigger consistency is in the bogey avoidance. Look at that. This not a single player that's averaged the top 40 is negative in bogey avoidance. This is a 2.2. Now, yes, the bigger numbers are in here. This is a 2.4, but a lot more consistency in the bogey avoidance. I'm thinking we're going to be looking at another tournament like the Valspar where we're just really focused on the bogey avoidance, would be my guess. Looking at par threes, look at that. There's a lot of success up here at the top. Surprised to see Piercy and Riley having played so well and not do well on the par threes here. So par threes, it's a 1.1. Par fours is a 3.9. I don't think they're going to carry too much in terms of importance this week. I really don't. We're not going to overlook them by any means, but I don't know how much I'm going to have in them. And then the par fives is a 1.0. Doesn't look to be any particular range of par threes. Honestly, maybe you would argue this one maybe, but there's none on the scorecard that fall to this range. There's 2, 1, 1, and 1. So we would absolutely be just looking at total par threes if that's the case. I think that's where I'm leaning this week, at least early on. Moving to par fours, again a reminder, we have 1 here and then 3, 3, and 3. Looks like, look at that, not a single player negative in the 450 to 500. At least early on, that might be the lean if you wanted to do that. I'm thinking it's more so just the par fours in general, but you know, you can't argue with the fact that not a single one of these players who has played Memorial Park multiple times and has been very good, they are not they're above field average in terms of these 450 to 500s. So perhaps that's the range we want to focus on. Interesting to see. Par fives. not a whole lot here, interestingly enough. Johnny Vegas has been really bad at the par fives here. Jaeger's not been good at them. But there does appear to be a massive lean towards the 550 to 600, which would make sense. 2 of the 3 fall to that range. And then lastly, let's take a look at quick look at proximity. So total prox looks to be something that could be a lean here, pretty strong there. Of course, the majority of our approach shots come at 200 plus, and Vegas has been just horrendous at Memorial Park from 200 plus. Everybody else has been fairly solid, though, so take that for what you will. Joel Damon's been kind of bad, but everybody else has been kind of solid. Very hit and miss in here. You have either some great performances like Joel Damon and Jaeger, Finau to a lesser extent, or you have some really bad performances like Piercy, Riley, Hughes, Rye to a lesser extent from 150 to 175. Maybe that doesn't make a lot of sense. There are a few short par fours here, but I don't know. It's another situation where we'll have to go through the prior leaderboards and see if anything develops as we look at those. I don't see a whole lot, just maybe total procs, which if that's the case, we might be looking at opportunities gained, perhaps. But anyway, that is it for the show this evening. Like I said, a little bit shorter since I decided not to look at Memorial Park against the average full field course. Again, would really appreciate to hear the community's feedback on that. If you get any, if you could gain any value at looking at a course against the average full field course, would love to hear whether you want to continue to see that or treat it like tonight and just kind of remove that from the process of the week. Thanks to Darnell for jumping in chat, much appreciated. Appreciate that. We'll stay in touch, and you know, baseball is just right around the corner, like you said. So I'm sure I'll be doing something, or I will be doing something for it eventually. Probably won't be doing anything special for opening day, just time commitments and whatnot. But thanks to you for jumping in chat, and thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. It helps me out a lot with you doing that, so I really appreciate that. Hopefully your all's Valspar went better than mine, and I will try to figure out what I'm going to do in terms of research and put that out on social media tomorrow. But with Memorial Park moving from the fall to the spring, might be a situation where we might approach this as a new course. I don't know yet. So be on the lookout for that. For all of the wagers that you had this past week for the Valspar Championship, for all the DFS contests you played this past week for the Valspar Championship, and until I see you tomorrow night for the Data Dive Show, may all your bets be profitable.